Hello, Business 600A students. This is Professor Hassey. It's our week 4 introduction video. A little late this weekend. Today is in fact Monday, June 28th, and we have class this evening. But this gives everybody a good idea, especially if you're not going to be in class this evening, an idea of what we're doing this week. We're going to be reviewing our problems from Chapter 3. We're going to be finishing and completing the accounting cycle, doing the financial statements and the closing entries, and we have couple exercises to practice that in our in-class lecture this evening, exercises 21, 22, 23 on page 129 of your text. Then we have assignment 3, another graded problem to do for next weekend. And again, I'm sorry it's due on 4th of July, but just it gives you incentive maybe to complete it a little bit earlier. It's problem 7A on pages 137, 138. And in this problem, you are going to be responsible for putting together your own spreadsheet on the problems. And I'll talk more about that during our class Monday evening. But first, let's look at a short video that summarizes the first few weeks of our Business 600A class.
Journal entries. We learned about making a trial balance. We learned about how we make adjusting entries after that trial balance. We make adjusting journal entries, and then we have an adjusted trial balance. Ultimately, we have some financial statements. We have some closing entries. And then we can reverse some things that we made mistakes with. So I think it'd be good we just go through and just kind of go through the process, this cycle, and just talk just to make sure you understand exactly what's going to take place at the firm of how a transaction ultimately is recorded by a company. So first off, it all starts with the journal entry, right? You've got some kind of transaction, you make an entry for it, and it's recorded. That's how it initially comes into existence, so to speak, from a financial perspective. Then ultimately you post it to a ledger. Now for different firms that might be different things. In the old days there was a really big ledger, right? Some big sheet of paper that had and there was a book that it was in, and you go to that ledger and you ultimately update these things over time. For your firm today it might be Excel is your ledger, or maybe QuickBooks or something like that. Ultimately you make the journal entries, and then you need to post them somewhere, right? So your key is, it doesn't really matter what the format of the ledger is, that you're posting this entry to some kind of master account or some kind of master file. And then after that, remember, you create the trial balance, where you're basically saying, okay, what are the totals, of accounts receivable and all these things, and you've got the two columns, you've got the debits, and then you got the credits, and you just want to see that they balance. You want to see that they're equal to each other. That was kind of the purpose of the trial balance, is to see that things balance. And then after you've got the trial balance together, you go ahead and you make adjusting journal entries. Remember we talked about that some things over time, they expire or they get used up, right? You might say, okay, well, I looked and the supplies have been used and we weren't really making journal entries regularly for that, or there was some interest expense or revenue. And you go ahead and you make these adjusting journal entries, these AGEs. You go ahead and you make these, and then after you've done that, you're in a position to create an adjusted trial balance that now reflects the adjusting journal entries. And then after you have done that, then you go ahead and you start putting together some financial statements, some things we haven't talked about yet: the income statement, the balance sheet, the statement of cash flows, things we're going to get to in other videos, but you can put those together once you have an adjusted trial balance. And then the very end of the period, what you're ultimately doing after you've had the financial statements, after you've shown all that, you close out those temporary accounts, right? The revenue, the expenses, the dividends. Remember, those things they just exist for a certain period, right? For a year or a quarter, but then we close them out to retained earnings, ultimately through that income summary account. But ultimately, these things get closed out and they end up going to retained earnings, which is a permanent account. And then after you've done the closing entries, then you can go ahead and say, okay, well, let's put together a post-closing trial balance. And again, as always, want to make sure that our debits equal our credits. And if they don't, then we know that we made some kind of mistake along the way. And then optionally, at the beginning of the next period, If we realize that we made some kind of mistake, maybe we shouldn't have made an adjusting journal entry, one of those entries up here, we say we shouldn't have done that. We actually found the supplies or that we thought we had used or whatever. You can go ahead and you just reverse an entry, right? You just flip it. If you credited the supplies before, you debit it, and vice versa for the corresponding entry. You just basically flip the entry, and that undoes the effect of any kind of mistaken entry that you basically wanted to undo.
Okay, that was a brief rundown of what you now, through this end of this week, number 4, will need to know. That a complete accounting cycle. That's what our midterm examination next week is going to be about, week 5. But this week we finish it up with a final assignment, problem 37A. So a couple things to note for our class and for your study this week. If you go to week 4 in our file folders, you'll see the exercises that I'll be reviewing in class Monday evening and the solutions there. But those are exercises that are practicing the final segment of the accounting cycle, taking the adjusted trial balance and doing financial statements and then closing entries. You also have an assignment, number 3, which is due next Sunday, to do problem 37A on page 137, 138. Again, similar practice on closing the entries, completing all the necessary adjustment, final financial statements at the end of an accounting period. And then, but in this one, you are going to be doing your own creating of the spreadsheet. I will not give you a file to work from. So you can use our previous files as templates, but in assignment 3, you will be producing your own spreadsheet work to hand in and post by next Sunday. So that's one thing to note, and we'll talk about that in our class Monday evening. So that sets us up for week number 4 of our 600A class. I hope you're all getting something out of this at this point in time. I know the numbers can be a little bit confusing or intimidating, but based on the results of your first assignment and looking for assignment number 2, which was due on last evening, Sunday, looks like you're all getting the grasp of it pretty well. If you need extra help or need some tutoring, please feel free this week to let me know so we can get some help to you. All right, everybody, we'll see you all Monday, June 28th at 6 p.m. Adios.